Okay, good with working. All right. So just hi Ricky, how's it going? Thank you for coming onto my podcast today, and yeah, just giving me your time as well. And yeah, how's it going? How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. Yeah, a lot, as you said a little bit earlier, a lot's going on
Yeah.
this week, but I'm
Mhm.
prepared and I'm staying on top of it. I think probably the most important thing I try and do every Monday morning is just try and plan out my week, and I think that helps me keep a little bit more of a level head and a little bit more in control. And
Yeah.
because of that, I'm okay. I'm surviving.
That's good to hear. Yeah, that's good to hear. Because the thing is, I just came back from China, right? And the weather here is still a shock to me because I'm like, because right now it's cloudy and it's a little bit miserable. Whereas, in other places, it's usually just consistent. If it's summer, you get the sun, but to be honest with you, I really enjoyed. I really missed it. I really missed the British weather, and I'm so glad like I'm back. So yeah, I'm also still like settling in, but not a lot is going on with me right now. But I'm trying my best as well to kind of keep that level head. So, Ricky, the reason why obviously we're chatting is because we're both in the sort of the mental health sector, and we're focused on. Well, I'm focused on men. It seems yours is quite general, but you are a man who's in mental health. So, do you mind just sharing your like sort of mission and what you're about and stuff like that?
Yeah, I can do. So I'll start from the top and my story, how it all came about with the brand. But it
Mm,
started when I was 18, actually, and I started to develop patchy bald spots on my head. I went to the GP, who diagnosed me with alopecia, and it was caused by depression.
mm,
And the first thing they suggested was antidepressants. And at the time, I had close friends and family members who were on antidepressants, and I didn't feel it was the right method for me. Uh,
mm,
Basing it on how their experiences and how they were finding it, I just didn't feel it was right for me, whether that's right or wrong. But what I decided to do, I decided to try something different. And what I'd do is I'd go into my room and I'd turn off the lights and I'd light a candle. And I'd just start staring at the flame, thinking about any problems that I had at the time. And then over time, I started to come up with solutions to those problems. And then I'd simply blow out the candle and get to work on the solution. And I just kept doing that as a repetitive process every time I had a little bit of a problem.
yeah.
And amazingly, it worked. And looking back on it now, because I did this throughout my early 20s. And looking back on it now, I think the way we sum it up is cognitive bandwidth, or just allowing time to self reflect and allowing time to just think.
Mm,
Something which is even probably more important right now.
yeah.
But there was a time where it did stop, and that was as my relationship became a long term relationship. We ended up buying a house, starting a family, all these sort of things, getting married, and I stopped giving myself or allowing myself time for myself, and then that's when my rut started to happen again. And there's a whole story behind it where because of this rut I wasn't allowing time for myself, and as a result, I wasn't spending enough time with my family. And so, yeah, it came to a point where it was near separation, and that was actually when I started looking for professional help and using candles again. And that was in 2021, so Christmas 2021. This was all happening around that time. And the reason I started using candles again was because I was actually watching a Netflix Christmas movie called Love Hard, and the in the Christmas movie there's a Chinese kid, and he doesn't want to follow in his dad's footsteps of running his Chinese shop, running the shop. He wants to create men's candles, and I just sort of snickered at it. I was like, oh, men's candles, men's scents. Why?
Mm,
And then that night I couldn't sleep because I remembered all the different times when I used candles and
mm.
how much it meant to me. And
Wow.
then the day after, that's when this whole snowball effect started happening. I started researching the candle market. I started researching men's mental health, and how the two are linked. You know, how can my old habit set become something which is useful to today? And the way I did it was using QR codes. So modernizing that wellness candle, the traditional thing about it being scent, I decided to use QR codes. So when you purchase a candle based on a topic, let's say a wellness topic, so let's just say gratitude, you also get a QR code. You scan the QR code and it takes you to a video talking about gratitude, and also a worksheet. So it's almost like a journal sort of worksheet within a candle. And I feel it's a lot more productive and a lot more involving than just scent, which is the traditional wellness candle, which I think is very important for me. Just feeling like there's something tangible to get on with, and that's I think customers, when they say they're very surprised it's more than just. So what they always say is it's more than just a candle. That's what customers keep saying, and that's a nice feeling when you get those messages to say, okay, wow, I get it.
Mm. Well, thank you for that. There's a lot to unpack from that. I was just trying to keep track. Just like, okay, let's go back to the start, actually, to the beginning.
Go for it.
So, the
Yeah.
beginning, I can sort of relate to what you're saying in terms of going bold, because I went bold while I was at uni. And I think for me, it was also straight, coming from stress as well. So, yeah, I mean, I didn't have the solution though. I didn't even go to the GP or something. I remember the day I did it was St. Patrick's Day 2017, I think, or 16. But it was St. Paddy's Day, and I went to the barber's, and he was basically just like cutting my hair. But then I just thought, you know what? Let me just, because my girlfriend at the time, my ex, she had told me, oh, you're thinning at the top. And that was like, it hurt my confidence a lot. So I was trying to like, play it off. But when I went to the barber, I sat there and this guy was just like doing this thing. I was just like, you know what, just take everything off. And he was really cool about it as well. He did the razor and he massaged my head. I was like, it was the first time I ever went fully bald. And when I met my friends, after that, because it was St. Paddy's what we're going out. So when I met them, I was expecting like a reaction, but they just looked at me. One of them was like, one of my friends called Yeti. He said something. He says just something like, sarcastic, like, oh, right, your head is shinier today than usual, or something like that, right? But it was almost like it was normal. They were just like, oh, they kind of. I was like, wait, what? I was expecting them to like, lay into me and stuff.
Yeah,
Also,
yeah.
did you sort of have those
Very,
experiences?
yeah, very similar. So I was in denial, I'd say, for quite a bit. So I had the alopecia, and then it started to grow back a little bit, but it was very patchy, and I would always try and comb it over a bit, or I didn't go to a barber's. I went to a stylist, and they were trying to cut it strategically to cover patches. And I
Yeah.
look back at old photos, with me and my wife, and I think, why didn't I just shave it sooner? Because it's so obvious, especially when the wind hits it. And the funny thing is, I do remember as well when I did decide to just get it shaved. Everyone's reaction was similar to what I thought, and that was, I should have done it sooner. They said you should have done it sooner. It suits you. And now I look back and think, actually, yeah, it does suit me. I should have done it sooner. And
True.
so it's a very similar story, and I'm so much more comfortable like with it now. And looking back, thinking, why didn't why did I
Yeah.
try and get these strategic haircuts? But no, I think now I'm definitely more self-confident, I suppose, compared to back then,
Mm,
in my 20s,
right.
where I was definitely. I felt like probably more people were watching than they really were, if you know what I mean. It's one of those anxieties, I suppose.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I feel sometimes we think people are paying attention to certain things, but they're really not. They're paying attention to themselves. And yeah, speaking of strategic haircuts, I used to get the fade. You know, where you you fade the sides and you just leave the top so that you can't tell that it's thinning at the top. But anyway, so the candle thing that you're talking about, how like what was that? How did you even get to a point and say, okay, I'm gonna look at this candle and sit here and think about my problems, and then like what were you doing? Were you journaling about it, or were you just doing it
So
mentally and just
so at the time, I mean, I don't think like now journaling's really popular. I don't think it was even popular back then at all. No one mentioned journaling then, and ultimately it was self reflection. It was just me sitting there thinking about stuff, and
right,
even the ones I sell are big candles with a 40-hour burn time, so you can use it for leisure. Back then, I was
right,
using a tiny little tea light, so it was
hmm
hard. It was a tiny little thing. I had hardly any burn time.
right,
Um, how did it? So it was an interesting one. I don't honestly know why I decided to turn the lights off and just stare at it, but I guess, and when I speak to other people as well, there is something about just staring at a flame, which is just so
mm,
simple,
yeah,
but it does take you away from everything else, all of life's distractions. It just watching a flickering flame, it does take you away from it. Um, and then in terms of coming up with the solutions, I think when you give yourself space to think about what's going on, making yourself more self-aware,
yeah,
that's when answers come to you. And ultimately, I do believe people already know their answers, their own answers,
mm, yeah,
and it's usually hidden behind fear or hidden behind something else that
yeah,
they're not really willing to accept.
mm,
So I think having that self-awareness just brings it out, and it
yeah.
makes you a bit more prepared for it.
Mm. That's excellent. I love that because that's one of the reasons why, well, that's the main reason why I became a life coach actually, because being a life coach is not like being a therapist, but you're helping someone find the answers that they have within them. And I think for me, that's so fulfilling because if I can get someone to a point where they're like, oh, I didn't think of it that way, but I didn't give them advice. I just got them to a point where they can look at things from a third party perspective. I really love that. Um, so I think one of the most creative things that I found through the whole thing because what your brand is B Man candles, right? How do you pronounce it? Is it B Man or B Men? Like,
Oh, so it actually stands for something, and I say Baman. But
hmm
I'm quite happy with people saying it's B Man because it is aimed at men's personal development and mental wellness.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I would say as well though, even it is aimed at men. Surprisingly, 68% of my sales are female. So I don't know if that shocks you or not, but it still shocks me, and I didn't realise that would be the case. And when talking to customers for feedback, it's wives buying it for their husbands to open up the conversation of mental health, or
Right.
mothers buying it for their sons to open up the conversation of mental health.
Nice.
And that's great. I think you can look at it in two ways. I think that's absolutely amazing. It's great that people are using it for that. But it also tells me that in the UK, men still aren't prepared to open up and talk about matters like this. So yeah, I just thought I'd share that, and
That's all right. Yeah.
that is my mission, is to try and flip that percentage in a way, you know, because
hmm
if we can get
Yeah.
more men comfortable like speaking up about mental health and not seeing it as a weakness, but actually as fuel to do more, which is what I use it for. Any sort of challenge is I take it on board and I just use it as fuel, and
Yeah.
the more we can do that, I think that'd be better.
Yeah. No,
But it's
that's
pronounced Baman anyway.
the man. Okay,
Yeah.
sure. I mean, before because I think I've seen you somewhere else breaking down the acronym, which I would like you to break it down here as well. But I just want to say, for me, it's similar because I suppose for my mission, I realize that men are more likely to commit suicide, aren't they, than women, and that's basically from what you're saying. Men are not as open as speaking about these things as women are. And also, I feel sometimes when I make videos about men sharing their emotions with women, I get so much pushback. Men are like, "What are you talking about? What? No, no, no." And I'm like, "It's okay to just," because I suppose the misconception is I'm probably telling them to, I don't know, to cry all the time and to just like be mopey. That's not what I'm saying. I suppose like it's trying to get that articulation clearly. Like, yes, we are emotional, but there's a different way of expressing that emotion. As long as we express it, that's good, but not just bottling it in, right? Um,
Yeah.
but no, do you mind maybe breaking down your acronym for the B
Yeah, yeah,
man?
sure. Yeah, so the man is belief in everything I do, empathetic to people in need, meaningful in the way I live my life. Meaningful in the way I live my life. Meaningful in everything I do, alive in the way I
Yeah.
live my life, and non-judgmental towards others.
Wow. How did that come
So,
about? That's amazing.
so B Man, the brand, it was about for all the times people have said to me and other men, man up, grow some balls,
Mm.
be a man, all that sort of stuff. So that's where the name came from. But then I also wanted it to mean something else to me, which was in much sense a direction. So a direction of how I want to live my life, the values that I want to live my life with, and that's what it means to me. Um, so it's basically a personal mission, I suppose, to keep on track with those values. And but at the same time, yeah, it stares me in the face every single time I see the brand. Then it just stares me in the face as a reminder, and I can see it in the webcam actually. So all this, I make this. This is my commitment wall, and this stares me in the
Wow.
face as a reminder too. And it's
Mm.
basically goals, missions, different values in my life right now, and that's it. It's
Wow.
just a reminder.
Yeah, that's amazing. No, I love it. I think the brand is like minimalistic. I like the logo as well. I mean, I do love candles as well. So, but it's not very common for guys to like candles, is it? Because for me, I don't know. I just like how they set the vibe. But I've never actually just maybe I've done it. Not like you,
Well,
where you just
it's
stare at it.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. So before the brand and the company started, I did a lot of research. I researched for about a year, and when talking to men, the most common thing was, "Yeah, I use candles. I use my girlfriend's candles. I use my wife's candles." And I'm thinking to myself, right, there's got to be men's candles out here. If everyone's using their girlfriends and wives' candles, there's got to be some out there. And truth is, they're not. There's sort of white labeled candles you'll get in John Lewis and Next, which are obviously not theirs. They just bring them in and slap their brand on it. But there are not any high end candles just dedicated to men. So as well as that as being a USP, obviously I've got the wellness side of it as well, and it's bringing those two together. So it's an interesting one where actually a lot of men do use candles, and it's going to be a challenge to break that stigmatism of actually, yeah, you can have one yourself. You don't need to be quiet and just use your partners.
Yeah.
Um, but no, I think that times are changing, and when I look at the US, I believe things like culture and habits travel overseas. And with the US, the male candle market is huge. So I do believe we will, and obviously mental health and everything over there, especially for men, they're more open to talking about it. So I do believe those sort of trends will come overseas one day as well.
No, I'm sure there will. It's only a matter of time. But so what are the sort of what have you realized on this journey about maybe something that you didn't anticipate that has been an adverse effect from this journey of yours?
Yeah, well, probably the one I mentioned before, where I was always trying to focus on men's sales, but at the moment, sales 68% are female, and I hadn't realised that was going to be the case. But then I just see that as a mission to change it. So that's been a big one. Also, so I started the company only in November 22 on International Men's Day.
Yeah.
So 19th of November 2022. And the sort of comments I get from people has it's so motivating. It's been so overwhelming actually as well, and that's that's the sort of the added fuel as well, just to see that okay, people here are suffering and in silence. That you probably know this yourself as a life coach. There's a lot of people out there who are keeping quiet about all the issues that they're facing. But when they speak up about it, they realise that their friends, their mates are actually kind of suffering from the same issues and stuff like that, you know. And the whole message of Baman isn't for me to tell you what to do, is for you to, or the user to gain the courage to just speak up to their loved ones, to the people they feel safe to do so with. And then doing so, you realise that a lot actually resonates. And this comes from when I did it. There were times where I've had suicidal thoughts and I battled them myself and then overcome it. But then having discussions with friends, I got the response of, yeah, I thought that too. And it's just like, okay, wow. So we're in a group, we're all sat talking about all these other things, and behind it all, we're all suffering the same issues.
Yeah.
You know, whether the stress be financial, or adjusting to having a child and family life. That first kid, the adjustment to having a first child, where it feels like a lot of control of what you can do in your day gets taken away from you. It's a big adjustment. And some people just aren't ready for it, but then they don't talk about it too, and that's where the issue is. But yeah, so I think those are the biggest things for me.
Yeah, no, I
it's
agree.
quite deep there. I'm quite deep there.
No, this is why we're doing this. The deepness is I'm here for it. So I'm not sure if you know Dave. Do you know Dave? He's one of I think his album was like "We're All Alone in This Together." So I thought that was really cool play on words there. But speaking of fatherhood, there and time, you kind of alluded to it, which is I was going to ask anyway. But I'm glad that you just pivoted into that. So I've heard you also mentioning, because I've been trying to find you online. You're very conspicuous, because I'm like, where is he? There's only like very short videos. I haven't seen like anything really long. But there's something you mentioned, which is time. So when it comes to time, you just mentioned it just now as well about, you know, that when you have a child, your first child, time gets absolutely stolen from you in some way. So what I guess for the sake of not trying to compounding questions, maybe let's start with time itself. How can giving yourself the time to reflect, why is that so important?
Why is it important? Giving yourself time to reflect allows you to make yourself aware of any situations that you may be facing now or are going to come up. And when you're ready for certain things, especially ones which are going to come up, is less of a hit, there's less of a blow, because you're prepared for it. Well, even that little bit prepared for it. So that's what I do. I every Monday morning I do self-reflect. So it is one of the candles, but I'm happy to share it. And it's what I do is I self-assess last week. I think about any mistakes or anything that I can improve on, and lessons learned, and then make myself aware of it and what I need to change for the following week ahead. There's so many different things that I suppose journal about and do things like that. Any fears that I've got coming up, or levels of stress, I do the same thing. And in terms of time management as well, probably one of the most important, because there's obviously all of us have a lot on, but one of the most important things I do is a concept which I think is in one of my videos. I call it the lead domino. You heard of this?
Briefly, yeah, but please.
Cool. So every morning I ask myself, or write down, what's my lead domino? And a lead domino is one task which will have a knock-on effect to doing more things. And it's usually it's not always the biggest task, but it's the one we're avoiding the most usually. And I always try to complete my lead domino first. So completing my lead domino first actually gives me this massive sense of achievement before I've even finished the rest of my day. And then everything else that follows,
Right.
you do it with so much positivity. Whereas usually what people do is they do it the other way around. The thing they need to do the most, or sometimes the thing they fear the most, they leave it towards the end and they do all the easy wins first. And this this important one gets knocked onto the next day or the next week or the next month. So I basically do the opposite. I
Yeah.
encourage others to do the same.
Start with the easiest one, so you get that momentum, right?
Just start with the one which
Uh,
means the most to you. And that's your lead domino, the one that has the knock-on effect to doing more.
yeah. Okay. No, that's brilliant. I love that. I love that. So when it comes to, because you have a business and a family, uh, I know because I recently, my cousins who are my age have families now and they're employed, and I can tell that sometimes time just like slips away like sand, right? It just drips from your face. So how are you? What's your like? Because there's a lead domino as well, but how are you juggling a business and family life and yourself as well? Because like we said, right, you need time for yourself, time for the business. Like, so how are you managing to pocket and compartmentalize all those things?
Yeah. So me and my wife, we got to understand it is a team effort. And if I'm having time to myself, she needs to have time to herself too. And that's the most important thing. What one thing, a little share actually. So years ago, I've had other businesses in the past, and I would work myself into the ground. I thought I had a great mindset, but what it actually was grind set, and I'd grind myself into the ground trying to get loads of different things done. And it got to a point where it starts affecting family life and relationships. And then what would happen then? And I'm sure people will resonate with this pattern. That momentum you had for work just stops because all of your personal life has just caught up with you, and all the issues which you're just leaving behind constantly just caught up. Now, I recognise that that's not the way to do it, and it is better to have a balance and continue. So rather than working really fast and working really hard, it's actually better to have a slower momentum, but manage everything else around it equally. And then what happens then is you don't have that sudden stop in your life every time you burn out. It's burnout basically. So
Mm.
I I think it's understanding that. I know I don't even think it's completely understanding that and accepting that things can happen slower and it's okay, rather than being in a rush to get everything done, thinking that's the right way, because it really isn't when when it starts affecting your personal life, especially with family. Um, and also it is planning, so it's really ensuring that you communicate with your partner and making sure that what you plan to do for the week ahead is okay, or for the month. And because yeah, so you've got your own business. There'll be times where you're going to be away, or there'll be things which pop up. And like I said, it's a team effort. You both got to work at it together. It's not just you on your own, or just me on my own.
Yeah.
It's making sure you everything is balanced around your family, because that's why we do it. At the end of the day, isn't it? You're not
Right.
just doing it for yourself. You're doing it for the people we love.
That's right. Yeah. I agree with that. So to kind of tie in something we mentioned earlier about sharing your feelings with your partners and stuff like that, how do you rectify then? Okay, you've got yourself to a point where now you're burning out, everything is falling apart. What was your way of rectifying everything? Of course, you said communication, but maybe can you dive a little deeper into how to navigate that situation?
Yeah. So I would say we've been together for a long time now. We've been together 14 years, so she can kind of tell when I'm getting quite stressed, I suppose. Um, but the most important thing is it is communication at the end of the day, and those evenings when we put the little one to bed and we're sat there talking, it's making sure we do talk and not turn on Netflix or not do the usual let's chill out and watch something on TV. Just giving that, allowing that little bit of space of time to allow whatever conversation comes out to come out.
Nice.
Because when the
Right.
TV isn't on, things will come out, and both from both sides. And the most
Yeah.
important thing though is when it comes out is talking about it, saying about it with empathy, because otherwise, otherwise it may start an argument. So being empathetic and understanding is really important too.
Right.
It's not easy.
And
Let's be honest,
yeah.
it isn't easy, um, but
Yeah.
but it's vital.
But yeah, sure. So is there, in terms of, you said you've been together for 14 years, which is a long time, by the way. Congratulations. Some marriages don't even last that long. So you've done
So we've
well.
been married for
Um,
5 years. We've been married, but yeah, we've been actually
yeah.
together 14.
Wow. Strong. That's going strong. So is there a certain way, I've heard, was it Brene Brown, I think, she was saying that she tells her partner, like they have this way of communicating, like she comes in the house and like, today I'm a strong 20, out of 100, and he's like, oh, I'm like a 40, right? And they meet each other where they are. So is there a version of that that you do with your partner? And
No, there isn't. I've not actually heard of this one,
no.
but no, there isn't. So we just try to make sure there's times where there's less distractions, so those conversations can come out. Um, but I like that concept though, and I can see that working, and that's great. Um, one thing we try to do, and admittedly we don't do it that often now, and it's really important actually. But my friends still do it, and this is great. And it's called a monthly relationship check-in. And it is what it is it's checking in with your
Wow.
relationship. So
Okay.
it's a set series of questions which you go through together and
Mm,
answer together. So they can be based around helping around the house, helping with kids, sex life, loads of different things, and it goes quite deep.
mm.
But having those conversations that really helps as well, and I do recommend that.
Wow. That's powerful. I love that. Yeah. Monthly relationship check-ins. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I'll consider them as well once I get to that point. I love that. So, in terms of kind of going all over the place here, but if we talk about the men's mental health thing, I remember earlier I misspoke as well. I kind of said you were doing something general, but we're doing exactly the same thing, aren't we? So, but anyway, the when it comes to men, so if they buy the candle, they get the QR, they get the worksheet, and so what do they get the community as well alongside that, or is it
Yeah,
only for them to?
so that's only just started actually this week, so that's good timing. That was one thing
Oh, cool.
they were saying to me was, well, when they were using the candle at the end of it, they were buzzing, they were great. The worksheet was great, and there's longevity there, but then there's no one to talk to after. So yeah, I have. Sorry guys, it's sorry to everyone. It has taken a bit longer, but there is a community now, and it's advertised on the website, and it's a WhatsApp community for now. So you can contact me anytime, and everyone's we're on there. And the idea of the community actually
Hmm.
is to check in. So there's a process called checking in, and at the start of the week or at the end of the week, it's about checking in with your highs and lows. So any sort of emotions you're feeling, it's just putting it out there,
Yeah.
and it's a powerful thing. It is, I do it all the time with my other groups, and it makes you very aware of what's going on. And when you put it out there, as you'll know from your life coach, and you've got that accountability set to
Hmm.
it, then so
Yeah.
it means you can work on it. Rather than just having it at the back of your mind, thinking, "Oh, it's an issue," but that's it. It's at the back of my mind. It's not now. It's on the forefront. People can see it, and because of that, people usually will work on it then. But the most important thing about the community, or any community, especially around wellness, is to create a non-judgmental space,
Right.
and that's what the WhatsApp group is really about. So checking in a non-judgmental space.
Hmm. So when I was in Beijing, I was hosting events for men, but I was struggling a little bit with the topics because the topics you don't want to, I don't, because for me I'm different, as because I feel we're similar in the sense that we are able to go to the places that some men wouldn't want to go necessarily, right? So for me, I wouldn't mind talking about the inner child or like inner conflicts, but I found it quite difficult to get topics that men are attracted to, right? Or to get like a dynamic or something that men are like, oh, I would love to try that. So for you, in terms of candles, what what do they also then in the group? What's the like other dynamics in the group there? Are they before the check-ins? Is it just somewhere where people can just throw in what they feel or their progress, or like what are they expecting to kind of benefit from that, or how are you getting them to a point where they can you know be open enough to start talking?
That's the big challenge, isn't it? That is the big mission there. And I hope people find it themselves, like I did. And I know that speaking up without fear of judgment about any pains that I've had in my life have actually flipped that pain. Oh, so actually flipped that pain into fuel. And that's what I hope for other people at the end of the day, is understanding that by recognizing certain pains, they then have a choice of what they want to do with that. Whether they want to use it as fuel and motivation, or whether they still want to use it as something to hide at the end of the day. One thing I would touch on though with men, I do think it is that there does sometimes there does have to be a big pain point where you suffer a bit of pain, then you just go, right, that's it, I've had enough of this now.
Right.
New chapter of my life, let's go on. And I think when people get to that point, there's a lot more inner confidence to just get stuff done, and it's getting people to that point, recognizing their pain and suffering, whether they write it down or speak about it, and then think, right, this is now the new chapter of my book, and that changes a lot for people.
Yeah, sure. So it's deciding to sort of flip the page because you want to be a different kind of man then, yeah?
Yeah, completely. And it's making sure they flip it themselves rather than being forced to flip it, isn't it? And when you see other people deciding to start new chapters around you, I think that's where the motivation. So within the community, that's where the motivation comes to do it yourself, isn't it? When you're surrounded by like-minded men, which are doing that, you think, right, now it's my turn.
That's great. Yeah, I like that. Yeah. So, I mean, what would you say to, or what would be your advice to someone? Because I feel for men, it's generally like you said, we tend to wait until it gets to, oh shit, right? If it's a little bit uncomfortable, we're just we brush it off until it gets to that level of being unbearable. So how are there any steps one can take? I mean, first of all, yes, it's finding that community, but what are the immediate steps that someone can take before things get to that level?
Yeah. So this, I was on a podcast I think a few months ago, and this point was raised, and it was very interesting actually, because I hadn't thought about it before. But if you consider your friendship groups when you're in a big group, the conversation topics in a big group are very different to ones when you're in a smaller group. And the smaller group, more often than not, is when you're driving home from some sort of event and it's just two of you in the car. And then you've got that long drive home and there's just two people, you and your mates out in the car. The conversation topic is very different then, And I believe that just simple things like that starting the conversation topics when you've got those intimate settings where it's just one of your mates.
Yeah.
That is the early steps of being able to speak up and share with a bigger crowd of people that you don't know. So I always do say, yeah, definitely share with loved ones, but make sure it's in the right environment to do so. Right. And the fact is, your friends, your mates, your loved ones, they've been around you for years. And in a one-to-one setting, you'll be very surprised with how much will resonate with whatever you share.
Wow. Yeah, that's very wise. Great. Yeah. So just utilize your loved ones in a small setting. Good. Okay. No, that's cool.
And it'd be important to add here as well, actually, there are going to be times where you may need medical help or further assistance. But having that initial talk with a loved one will then allow them to support you if you do need to go further with that.
Yeah. That's true. I love that because I think usually it doesn't occur to us. I think even with sexual health sometimes, some men don't even think to go until it's like, oh, I can't even sleep or I can't even pee, right? But they saw it like developing. So it's quite similar in that sense. But I love the idea about utilizing your loved ones because some men might not be inclined to go to the GP or somewhere, right? Or to seek professional help. But from someone who they're comfortable with, that they've known all their life, it's like, okay, let me see if I can open up that space for her or him. I initially think that it's important for us to go on this journey and to be very sort of receptive as well. Like for me, I know that I'm different in the sense that I'm open and I'm always trying to flip that page, as you said, right? I'm always trying to flip that page to get to that place deeper within myself. And I know that not everybody is the same. Not every man thinks the way I think. So it's trying to put myself in the shoes of the guy who's macho and manning up and like thinking, no, I don't need that. So
the alpha.
Yeah, the alpha, I guess. What are the challenges you found around that? Because, for example, candles, right? I love candles, but then most men don't. So what are the main challenges with that you found?
So one thing I know for sure is that the truth always comes out eventually. And I've learnt that it's easier to be transparent and share the truth early so we can just get on with the next thing. And with the macho or alpha male, it doesn't tend to be that way. There's a lot of stereotypes which they hold on to, and it is generational. My dad is one of them. He doesn't talk about his problems. He doesn't talk about his health. And although it has been changing since I've developed this brand, he is that part of that generation, and I do believe it is changing. But we do have males which are our age, which are holding on to the previous generation where they didn't talk about this sort of stuff. Right. But the most important thing there, and the takeaway, is the truth does come out eventually.
Nice. That's brilliant. The truth comes out eventually. No matter how much you try to bottle it up, it's just it's gonna find a way to come out. So, okay, as you kind of wrap up here, I don't want to take too much of your time. What's your favorite scent in your candles?
So there's one called Uplifting, and that's a really nice one at the moment because it's a bit hotter. It's summer, so Uplifting is more citrus based. So on the website is quite nice actually. So rather than the traditional candle where you just pick your scent, you pick your scent and then you pick your wellness topic. Yeah. So for the scent though, yeah, Uplifting, and then if I had to pick a topic which I really enjoyed in making, it would be the gratitude one. Especially when I talk to people about gratitude, there's a lot in that video which people will be able to really resonate with.
Why gratitude?
So, so in today's world, it's so easy to compare, especially with social media. And there's always a want. There's always want this. I want this. I want the next thing. And with the gratitude one, it gives you a chance to slow down and take in what you already have around you and appreciate that. And that's why it's really important to me because all these candles are from past experiences, and I was definitely one of them which used to compare a lot.
Yeah.
And now the tables have turned. I'm so grateful for everything that I have around me, and how much, as a result, that the amount of empowerment I get from that to continue to do other things, to continue to help other men is amazing. So that's why the gratitude one's really important to me.
Right, nice. Okay, I love that because as I think it reminded me of something you said earlier that you said the teachers are younger than you. You know, that makes me realize that we are old. We're old now, right? We're not boys anymore. So what would be, since you're also on this journey of, I've seen, you know, you create content and you have a business and you have a family. So, and you just mentioned something so key about comparing yourself and stuff like that. What will be your message to the young people who are content creating? Actually, no, that's not fair. The young men, because I feel like women have enough, right? There's enough going for them. They have yoga groups, and you know. So let's focus on the men. What's your message to the young men who wish to be established and you know all of this? So they're creating content. They're starting a business. They're starting families. What will be your message to them?
Yeah, great. Do you know, that's a great question actually. So speaking from experience here, in terms of momentum when you're running a business, right? I've started businesses that I wasn't really passionate about, but I saw a market gap to make money. Okay? And there's so many people starting their own businesses doing different things right now. And for momentum, the best thing to do is to start a business which you are passionate about and that you feel is a bit of your purpose. Because otherwise the momentum dries up. Especially when you're content creating, because you'll know this, creating content and putting it out there is so long and laborious and it takes a lot out of you. Okay. Yep. So doing it based on something you're passionate about has to be a foundation of that, because otherwise it is going to be soul destroying. So to the young ones out there, who are putting in the work and doing the hours like we are, make sure you're doing it with something you're passionate about, and 10, 15 years down the line, you're still going to be passionate about it.
Nice. Yeah. I love that. Yeah, that's true. Because I remember, I love that. Because yesterday I think, was it yesterday or Monday? I was doing something. I think I was editing a video, and I was like, "This is a lot, man." Like, I felt it, but I was like, you know what? There's a reason why I'm doing this, and it's not even about me. So that kind of gave me a little bit of okay, just keep pushing. And that moment that I had earlier this week is just so perfect for what you said, because that passion, that it's not even about you, it's about, you know, serving. It's gonna drive you when, like you said, momentum dries up and things get a little bit too heavy. So thank you so much for that. All right, so
do you know what, completely. I think as a foundation, right, all of us, in terms of purpose, we just want to help with people's pain. And that's what any business is. When you look at a business, it's solving someone's pain. And if you're passionate about solving that person's pain, that's it. You've cracked it, and you've found your goal in life.
Nice. Yeah, man, I can tell that you love what you do as well. Like you said, you have reminders on the wall. Cheers. And, you know, like, so it's great. It's really good to kind of catch a vibe. And thank you so much for coming into the podcast here and sharing your thoughts. So before you leave, where can people find you? And I mean, I've been to your website. I love it. I'm going to purchase some stuff soon. I love the candle set as well that you have. Very aesthetic. I love it. So where can people find you?
Yeah, so the website is www.bmancandles.co.uk. On social media too. So TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn. Posts get put up on there. So one thing I've always done since I was in my early 20s is kept a journal and written down quotes. So I'm dyslexic, so I can't really write long diary sort of stuff. So I've always written down quotes. And on social media, I share these quotes now. So they're sort of, you've seen it, like 10-second, 20-second snippets of these quotes and what they mean to me. So people really like that.
Oh, well, that's brilliant. No, I'm so curious to see how far we're gonna go on this men's mental health journey. And yeah, no, thank you for coming on here, Ricki. And yeah, appreciate you. I hope we can maybe come back on later on and see where you are, touch base a year later, see how things are
I'd love that,
going. Yeah,
definitely.
yeah,
Yeah,
cheers.
it's a weird sort of place, really. Things keep happening every month. Something big keeps happening, and it's just like, oh wow, right, and you're taken away from by it. So doing that in the future, I think will be good fun to see
Yeah,
the
yeah,
journey. I've enjoyed our
yeah.
chat. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I've enjoyed our chat as well. So thank you so much for coming, Ricki. Cheers.
Cheers.